Hey everyone, Sheila here from Life with Pets. So today we're going to be doing a remake of a video we did several years ago about our DIY filter. It was a very popular video and still is, and we get a lot of questions on it, so we decided to do a remake of it, and hopefully by the end of this video all those questions will have been answered. So let's get on with it. I'm going to set up everything that we need and we'll go from there. So this is the tank that we have one of our DIY filters in. As you can see, on the left we have a regular sponge filter, and on the right we have our DIY filter. The tank is looking like this because we are in the middle of doing a makeover on it. So I'm going to take it out, I'm going to go set it on the table, and then how we actually set it up, and that also includes connecting it to the air pump, and the same principle does apply for the regular sponge filter as well. So if you want to see how to set up two, then stay tuned. So to clean the filter you will need aquarium water, and then I also just use a small cup of water as well for the stones, but you don't actually need that. You need aquarium water simply because if you use tap water you will kill off almost, if not all, of the bacteria in this, and so it needs to be rinsed out in aquarium water. So this one I keep every time, I do not replace it, and so this is going to be squeezed out in the aquarium water. Now the filter floss, if it is really dirty, then I do completely replace it. If it isn't too bad, then I will actually just rinse it out and put it straight back in. And as you can see, this isn't bad at all. So I am going to just rinse this out and then put this one back in. And then the tube in the middle, you don't really need to do anything with that. And then the biomedia in the bottom, or the gravel, whatever you decide to use, you then just need to pour off the excess water. And then this is really what I use this for, because I just sort of tip them into that and swill them around in it, and obviously the water does get really nasty, and I just pour it off. So this one is a little more difficult to get 100% clean, but I will also use this towards the end and also do it again. So I'm going to wash all these components, and then I'm going to show you putting them back together and exactly what we use, and then connecting them to the air pump. You can see all the muck running out of this, so you can see that it does pick up the dirt in the tank. Now this is not that dirty because we don't really have a very large bio load in our tank, and so it doesn't really get too bad, which is why I only do it every 4 to 6 weeks, and even then, to be perfectly honest, I probably could go every 8 to 10 weeks. But I just prefer to do it when I'm sort of doing a bigger maintenance on the tank. So once you've rinsed everything out, you can then obviously just get rid of this water, but like I say, I do usually use a little more of it, even though it is on the dirty side still, just to sort of swill through and clean these a little bit more. So I'm going to move over to the table and I'll show you what we've used and putting this all together. So I've got everything set out on the table that you're going to need to either make this filter or to set up a sponge filter on a tank as well. So as you can see, there's a fair bit of stuff here. So we've got the air pump, and then we have a check valve. We've then got our glass and the sponge, polyfill, some biomedia, you can use gravel for that as well. We've then got the gang valve, our tubing, air stone, the tubing that goes with that sponge filter, and then we've got airline tubing, and then there's this bag of polyfill. This is the one that we use, but you can use any as long as it doesn't have any added chemicals. Some of them do to make them fire resistant, so that is something that you need to be aware of if you're going to use this. So the setup on this filter is pretty simple, and it basically does work on the same principle as a sponge filter. So first of all, we're going to start out with the stones. Now the way that we layer these is going to be stones, polyfill and sponge filter, and the reason for that is because of the flow that is created. You want as little mess as possible to get onto this, and so because the water is going to be sucked in through the top top, then you want the big particles caught, which is going to be by this, and then the finer particles will get caught up with this, which means bacteria can actually grow on this, because if this actually becomes full of mess and gunk and algae and all that sort of stuff, then it's much harder for the bacteria to grow. So I'm going to start with this tubing here, and this is just 1-inch PVC tubing, and then all we have done is cut out little ridges at the bottom because the water is going to get sucked up through here, so you need an outlet for the water. Obviously if you just put it flat on the bottom with this end, then there's no way that water can be sucked up. So I'm going to start with that, and the reason I do that is because I usually find it difficult to make a space for it once I start adding the stones. So this just makes it easier in that I can get them into place and it starts to sort of hold itself up. Once you've got a few in, then it typically will stay standing itself, and then you can actually just start pouring them in. Trying to not get the water all over the table because obviously we use these so they are already wet. There we go. Depending on the size of your jar, then you can add more or add less. Now this jar will do tanks, I would say from 5 to 10 gallons. We do use it in a divided tank, and so it is being used in sort of a 5-gallon section. Next, you want to take your polyfill, and as I said before, I am going to reuse ours because it wasn't that dirty at all. And with this, you want to pack it in really tightly. And the reason for that is obviously you want the particles to be caught as the suction is created. So next is the sponge, and you can basically use any sponge and then obviously just cut it down to fit. Now the one thing you do need to be careful of when using sponges, especially if you're going to use a sponge that is meant for a kitchen, and that is to make sure that it doesn't have any excess chemicals on it whatsoever. So it doesn't necessarily have to be an aquarium one, this just happens to be, but it doesn't have to be. I will leave links to everything I can in the description box below. So next we're then going to connect all this together to an air pump so that it will actually work, and I'm going to do this and this sponge filter because these are what we use in our divided tank. So I'm going to show how you connect two to one air pump. So this air pump here is a 10-gallon. It works perfectly fine with the 2 filters attached to it. So first off, what you're going to want is a piece of tubing. So we just cut this one and attached it to the air pump. And then you want your return valve. Now this is really important. If your power was to go out, then the water will actually back siphon down tubing from the filter down the tubing and can potentially go into your air pump, and obviously that would be really bad. And so this actually will stop that flow and stop it from happening. You need to make sure that you do have it on the right way. So you want sort of like the bigger end facing the air pump. We do sell all these kits. We do a kit with the air pump, the tubing, the valves, and the gang valves as well, and we do actually do them in 2, 3 and 4-way valves. So if that is something that you're needing, we do have those on our website, and I will leave them in the description box. Now for the DIY filter, you do also need a air stone, and that is going to go on some tubing and then down into the sponge filter like that. So that is how it's going to actually be in your tank. And then we're also going to have tubing from this as well. So just let me show you this one up close as well. If you take off the tube and thread it through the tubing, and then you're just going to put it onto this little thing here, you're just going to put it onto that, and then you're going to put the tube back into, and it is really that simple, and then that creates the suction. So with this, what is actually happening is the water is being drawn in from all sides of the sponge filter, and then sort of it bubbles out through the center. Now with this one, the water through the suction with the tubing and the air stone is being sucked in through here. This is how all this gets so dirty, and then the water is then recycled and comes up up the center of the tube, and so it traps all the dirt in this part here as the flow goes down. So it's why we have sort of the different sections of media, and why it's very important that the bottom one is the media where you want the bacteria. This is where a lot of the bacteria is going to be. There will be some in these parts as well, but most of it is going to grow on the media at the bottom. So first off, as I've shown you, we're going to connect this to this, and then we're going to do another piece of tubing on the other end of this. And then this piece of tubing, I tell you guys, the struggle is so real with all this tubing on this table right now. So we've got it connected like this right now, and then the other end of this tubing is going to be connected to your valve. So what I love about this setup, especially for betta fish tanks, is the fact that you can adjust the flow. So we've got that on the end, and then what is going to happen is the tubing that is attached to this one here, which if I can find the end of it, there we go. We're going to attach to this one here. Now sometimes it can be a little difficult to get them on. Obviously it needs to be very sealed, and then we're going to put this one on to here. And then the purpose of this, with these little valves that turn, or the little levers that turn here, is so that we can adjust the flow. And this is why I like this so much for a betta fish tank, because you can decide how much you want it bubbling and how much water surface movement there actually is. So this is a really good setup. So just quickly going over that again, and for those of you that have got it, I'm sorry, but we do get a lot of questions on this on our DIY video that we did many years ago, and so I do want to make sure on this one that I am much more thorough. So we have the air pump. From the air pump we have a piece of tubing. Now this can be as long or as short as you need it to be. We then have the check valve, which is going to stop water from coming back into your air pump. And then from this piece of tubing we then have, and let me untangle everything, we then have the gang valve. We usually call it a lever, but it can be called a gang valve. And we then have both the filters connected to that. And then once you put it in the tank, like I say, you are just going to adjust these so that you can adjust the flow. If you want to take a look at any of these, there will be a link in the description box below. So let's go and put these into the tank and let's see them set up. So as you can see, we have added one of the sponge filters into the back, and then we're going to add in the other one into this side, and my husband is helping me do this. And so we're just going to put it into the back there, and then we're going to add in the air stone into it so that we then get the flow. So we're going to now fill the tank up, and then we'll show you it running once the tank is fully completed. So as you can see, it is working just fine. With those levers you can then adjust what flow that you want. Now what is happening is the air bubbles are dragging the water up through the center, which in turn causes more water to be pushed in through the sponges down into the bottom of the jar, and then back out up through the center, and the process goes round again. If you want to see the full tank setup for this video, I will leave a link in the top iCard so you can go on over and watch that. Alright guys, thanks for watching. I do hope this video was more helpful and much more in-depth, maybe a little too long. However, I did want to make sure that I did cover all the questions that we get on a daily basis. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you know when we upload a new video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.